Let's turn our attention to India and Pakistan. A ceasefire appears to be holding after the nuclear-armed rivals accused each other of violating the truce. Donald Trump announced a ceasefire at the weekend and praised the two countries for using common sense and great intelligence. This is the latest of what he had to say.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these. They really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop.
Joining us now is Professor Joe Siracusa, Dean of Global Futures at Curtin University. Professor Joe Siracusa, thank you for joining us. We just heard Donald Trump there saying he believes that this will be a permanent ceasefire. Are you confident that it's going to hold?
Good morning, Gabriella. No, it's not going to be a permanent ceasefire. These people have been at each other's throats since the partition of India in 1947. I think India's won 4 major wars. There have been a number of cross-border conflicts in 1999, 201, 219, in which the United States played a major role. Now, they are both nuclear powers, okay? That's why this is a very important story. It shows here that nuclear deterrence doesn't exactly work. They have a number of issues that have to be resolved, particularly Kashmir and the like. And, Gabriella, there's a reason why the doomsday clock, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, doomsday clock is 89 seconds to midnight, because these two powers can go at it anytime they want. Now, India is 11 times the military over Pakistan, and Pakistan acquired nuclear weapons for the same reason a lot of countries do, is the great equalizer. And they won't hesitate to use these things. And so, President Trump did the right thing, though apparently I understand his vice president said initially that, this isn't our business. Well, actually it is our business, because if there is a nuclear war or anything that looks like it in South Asia, it'll affect the rest of the world for many, many years to come.
The conflict was initially triggered by a massacre of tourists last month in Indian-administered Kashmir. How can India be confident that there won't be another attack? And you mentioned the real concern of nuclear war. I mean, how quickly could this escalate?
Oh, well, look, this could go up the nuclear ladder very, very quickly. I mean, they probably would turn to tactical nuclear weapons. So, and there's no guarantee this isn't going to happen again. I mean, this Kashmir and that border, that control line there has been a burning issue for many, many years, and there's no guarantee that there won't be another terrorist attack. And now I understand that the Indian Prime Minister Modi has made it very clear that he will adhere to a ceasefire as long as there are no further aggravations. That is, there are no further attacks. So he may or may not be able to come good on that, but it really depends on the locals on the ground. This is a good example of how major powers get into things they don't want to get into because they can't control the people on the ground. Modi and the Pakistani leader have no control over the tempers that flare up at those levels, and they tend to overreact. Look, there are 9 nuclear powers. These two are armed to the teeth, and as I say, India would like to sort of crush these guys once and for all. There are 247 million Pakistanis, 1.4 billion Indians, so the Pakistanis are always going to rely on these nuclear weapons as the great equalizer. What about the irritants on the ground? Well, they can't do anything about that because these people have decided that this issue has to be resolved sooner or later. Now, there's a famous line, Gabriella, by William Faulkner about, the past is not even dead. Well, in India, the past has not even passed. I mean, these issues are as alive today, this Kashmir line, as they were in 1947. And the problem is that a lot of the wrong people are across the line because the British just drew a line and left the country very quickly. So there are a lot of these things are, sort of hangover problems. But look, this is in the war games, nuclear war games I've participated in and I've read about over the past 50 years, the weakest link in a possible nuclear conflict comes from this part of the world. And that is the war games between India and Pakistan always sort of result in some kind of a war taking place. On the other hand, it hasn't happened since they've acquired nuclear weapons. And so that is a blessing for us. But it has to be watched very closely. And I'll tell you what, if something happens there, all the rest of the news items are just going to fall off the table because this is the number one issue.
I want to talk to you about China. The US has struck a trade deal with China after days of negotiations in Switzerland. Donald Trump described the fresh trade agreement with China as a total reset. I mean, what's your assessment of the deal? Is it too early to be celebrating? It's, of course, seen as good news. What's your take?
Oh, Gabriella, as a longtime advocate of diplomacy, I think it's a pretty good deal. They had a 16-hour conversation in Geneva. That is Secretary of the Treasury and his opposite number in China. And they decided to dial it down a little bit. These tariffs of 145 and 125% are now reduced to 30 and 10%. They're back to real world numbers. I think as a result of this, President Trump probably gave up a little more than he wanted to. I mean, he called for this sort of trade war to right a number of wrongs. He thinks that because the American economy buys more than it is selling, that it's on the short end of the stick here. Well, that's true, but it's also as a result of investment transfers and the like. It's not as simple as that. And to go to war with China on trade, I think, is very dangerous for this reason. And that is all trade wars, like sanctions and embargoes and the rest of it, poison diplomacy, everything else, everywhere else. And the Chinese leader, President Xi, is always fighting for his life. It's not like they hold elections every 4 years in China. President Trump wanted to prove his point, so he went high on the tariffs. And the Chinese, they took the bait and they bit back. And of course, this doesn't help the American consumer. And it also makes things very difficult for Australia. I mean, if Australia then appeases China on trade, the Americans will be all over them for contributing to this particular situation. And if they help the Americans too much, or if they agree to what America's doing, and the Chinese will hold them accountable. And of course, the problem with this trade war or this tariff war is that nations like Australia are stuck in the middle. I mean, as long as there are nations like Australia who are dependent on China for their economic survival and on the United States for their military survival, I mean, you can see that it's very hard to ride this road here because, or to thread this needle, because Australia depends on both of them for very different reasons. But look, I'm glad to see it's down. It's a 90-day moratorium, so to speak. There's still going to be a lot of pain on the American and Chinese sides. A number of the companies have slowed down. The shipping in America has slowed down at these ports. It hasn't gone through, but at least we're not going to have long-term supply problems. And of course, could we have avoided this whole thing? No, I understand Trump's complaint here, and that is America has been taken advantage of. On the other hand, Americans, like Australians, they like cheap sneakers and laptops and dolls and pencils from China around Christmas time. So it's a very difficult problem to solve. And so I think we're back to common sense. And at the end of the day, the market tells you what you're going to do. I mean, if you're going to go against everything that your marketplace stands for, you're going to be in trouble. And in China, as people like to point out in some of your packages, that China's got problems with its cities, it's got problems with unemployment, has factories closing down, it's got property crisis. And the Chinese ain't that happy about life. And so these things make things very difficult. On the other hand, they could settle for a lot less than the Americans because President Xi can force the Chinese to sacrifice a great deal more than President Trump, who only has 3.5 years to run, to ask the American people.
Professor Joe Siracusa, Dean of Global Futures at Curtin University, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.